Viet Cuong is here today, not just to talk with us about the upcoming piece that will be on the Dallas Winds concert, but to help celebrate the fact that we now again can come together to play music live on a stage. And your piece is going to be a big part of this exciting celebratory concert. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I remember the chance to talk to you. I guess it was maybe 2 seasons ago when your piece Renewal was done by the Dallas Winds, and that's utterly an amazing work. I mean, you wrote it, so you must think very differently about it than I do. But I can't forget that work. I'm telling you, what from the minute I was able to hear it, um, it just stays in my mind, and that's something pretty spectacular. Um, so we're glad you're back, and you've been where in this past crazy year? What's it been like for you as such an active composer?
Well, thanks. I just thank you for about the kind words about Renewal. I'm glad it kind of stuck with you, and it's really nice to see you again and chat again. Um, yeah, during this pandemic, I moved down to Georgia back in the summer. I'm teaching this year at Kennesaw State University outside of Atlanta. So it's been nice. I'm really fortunate that I got some teaching work during this pandemic. And it was this pandemic's been interesting because I thought that I wouldn't get a lot of work, and so many things were canceled or postponed, and I thought it would just be kind of a lull creatively. But some organizations have kind of adapted and put together various chamber and solo projects, and I was fortunate to write some kind of like a handful of pieces I'll probably look back and call my quarantine pieces.
And was it different writing under these particular circumstances, socially, globally? Did that change how you approached the music that you were writing?
Yeah, it's as artists, I think all of our work usually reflects the time we're living in, and this was no exception. uh, I did write some pieces that were I don't know, very colored by the year. I wrote a piece for the New York Philharmonic's Bandwagon Project, where they did these outdoor concerts, like kind of off the back of a pickup truck around New York City. That was called Noise Suppression, and uh, it's like poking fun at Zoom's noise suppression technology, where they filter out background noises. So the piece was written for Anthony Roth Costanzo, and so he kind of turns into this character, this like snake oil salesman that's trying to sell this like fanciful noise suppression technology that can block out all of your life's troubles. Which I think back in the
Oh,
fall, especially around the time of the election, a lot of us were feeling like, you know, uh, kind of overwhelmed with everything that was happening. And I also wrote this variation on America the Beautiful for this pianist, Min Kwan. She put together this project commissioning 70 composers, like 70, to write variations of America the Beautiful. And uh, it's just like 70 different takes on that is really interesting. And my piece is called Echo Chamber, and all of the piano notes echo each other. So it's kind of
wow.
I guess let the music speak for itself whenever it's premiered, but it's kind of like a commentary on uh, the echo chamber. So, and then, but I have other pieces that I wrote that were just kind of wanting to reflect on the time. Like I wrote a piano and soprano sax piece called Sanctuary. That's for this saxophonist named Joshua Heaney, and I just wanted to write like the equivalent of a musical hug. So it's just a very kind of expressive and I think a really pretty piece, just using chord progressions that I've loved for my whole life.
Oh my. All of that sounds intriguing, and we need to hear it, and I'm sure now things are beginning to move, and
Yeah.
performances are beginning to happen, and there'll probably be pandemic themed concerts, don't you think? And
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there will be, but part of me is just like, I just want to move on.
yes, yes, yes. Well, this piece that the Dallas Winds will be showcasing and
Mhm.
presenting in this in such an exciting time of getting back on that stage at the Meyerson. That was written what, 2019, before all this stuff. Was it before Renewal or was it afterwards?
Just right after.
Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
how did you come up with you and Picasso's Bowl? I mean, I might not have
Yeah.
guessed that one. Tell me.
Yeah. You know, my parents, when I was growing up, my parents were big fans of art, of visual art, and so especially like impressionists and Picasso. And so we had these, poster prints hanging up in the house. I was telling the story once and people thought that they actually had those things. Like, no. So they were like reproductions, or just like posters that they framed in our house. And um I always loved Picasso's Dove of Peace. It's just like a line drawing of a dove. And uh, so I, from an early age, I like knew of Picasso and knew of a lot of his work, because my parents also had paintings from various eras of his life and artistic work. So I always wanted to write a piece or pieces that were inspired by these line drawings, because they say so much with so little. I don't know how familiar you are with them, but oftentimes they're just like a drawing of an animal with like a couple lines, and so you can totally tell what it is, and they have so much energy and vitality, even though they're so simple and are just black and white. So years later, I came across these series of bowl drawings, where he starts with like a bowl, and then it gets more and more opaque and detailed, and then after a bit of that, he transitions to like kind of distilling them, so they get simpler and simpler until finally we're just left with the line drawing of a bowl. And I thought, like, what a great kind of concept for a piece, where the music starts like a fully formed piece and it gets more complicated, more dense, and exciting, and then after that it kind of peels away itself, and just to reveal the essence of what the music is, like the very skeleton of it. So I wrote actually like a piece, an orchestra piece called Bullish, that's a lot shorter, that's like 5 minutes long, and then I expanded it to make bullet or bullseye, which is like 11, 12 minutes.
Uh-huh. Wow. People, when they're students, especially in music, you have to learn form, and you're in your
Mhm.
classroom, and you did it as well, I'm sure, and you had to analyze musical form, and nobody ever told you at that point about taking a series of drawings by Picasso as your concept for form, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like my take on a theme and variations
Yeah.
in a way, because it's like repeating material and like adding stuff to it and then taking stuff away. So it's kind of like a theme and variations where we're repeating stuff, and you can always hear the theme, but lots of different things are being done to it.
Okay. And it's written for how many players?
I should know this. It's like a chamber winds group with
Okay.
like a piccolo, flute, clarinet, bass clarinet, sax quartet, trumpet, horn, percussion, and piano.
Okay. So it's perfect for now, perfect for this concert.
Yeah, I mean, none of us saw what was coming back in
Right.
2019, but
Right.
it ended up being a piece that like filled a certain void in terms of having chamber music that's challenging, um, that can be done, socially distanced and with a smaller group.
Yeah.
It's like a thing. It's commissioned by this conductor named Nils Landsberg, and he was putting it on his like conducting recital. So it's like a tour de force for the conductor. So I'm excited to see Jerry do it, and I think it's gonna be really great.
Um, will you be able to be at that concert?
No, I think I'll just tune into the stream because it is
Uh-huh.
being streamed,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Um, when you, uh, I had a question, and I know they're going to edit this down because there's just
Mhm.
always so many questions when I get the chance to speak to you, because I love thinking about how someone, I mean, you're still in the younger years, right?
Mhm.
And so you're not that far removed from uh, your student days, although you're now a professor or teaching, right?
Mhm.
But when you think, when you compose, when you, at all points, how much of that exposure, as you were talking about theme and variations. I mean, do you automatically think back to traditions like, well, or with spatial arrangements with, do you think of Charles Ives and how he was doing this before anybody ever knew what this all
Mhm.
meant to, or do you think about Haydn, or do you think, I mean, is this still in you from your formation as a composer, as a musician, and does it matter as you evolve into your own style?
Yeah, I've always been a composer who likes to kind of honor different music that I like, or that I love with my own music. And it kind of means like taking influences from a lot of different places. And sometimes with every piece, it can be a different sort of influence that people might pick up on, or sometimes I completely subconsciously do it accidentally. They're like, oh, this sounds like this. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize. um, like a couple years ago, I wrote a double oboe concerto that's very inspired by Baroque music. And I remember I was trying to have the first couple minutes sound like, I wanted it to sound like very convincingly like Vivaldi.
Uh-huh.
And it just didn't end up sounding like Vivaldi because it's like I'm not Vivaldi. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't like do it. It ended up sounding like kind of like Bach and Vivaldi mixed together in a way, but then it also just kind of sounds like I think if I was a Baroque composer, what I would write. So it's just you can take all these different influences as a composer, and then it ends up kind of being filtered through you, and you
Yeah,
start to just sound like yourself, which is kind of an exciting thing to realize, or to after many years of like imitating other composers and stuff, you start to feel like you find something that feels really personal to you.
yeah. I bet. And that's probably even more challenging if you're writing for specific people, or as you say, this was for a conducting recital
Mhm.
of a colleague, of a friend. So you have to factor in, do you have to stop yourself sometimes and say, now, wait a minute, this is for this person, or this is for this purpose? Does that factor into it?
Yeah, it can, because when you get a commission, it's a balance of many things. You want to balance what you want to do or what you're like envisioning, and that's perhaps the most important thing in the balance of things. But then there's also, what the ensemble is expecting or what they want, and you can always kind of tell what they want because sometimes you just ask them straight up what they want. And
Yeah.
then also just the practical limitations are a thing that you have to balance as well, in terms of how many rehearsals you think you're going to get, what the instrumentation is, sometimes very specific things like we cannot rent a 5 octave marimba. So all these practical considerations. And then also some composers try to balance how if their music can really connect with the audience as well. Maybe not necessarily if the audience will walk away loving it, but to try to connect with them in some way. Some composers don't care about that, but I definitely do. So it's a lot to kind of think about when you're writing, but and some pieces you can kind of all the stars align and it just works on and like on all those levels. And then some other pieces you just kind of write for yourself. um if you want to explore something, like I have some pieces that I wrote that I don't really care if they become standard rep at all, like they had one performance or whatever, but it was kind of a thing I needed to write other stuff that would possibly be more popular or more widely performed.
Yeah. So in that, all the things you said could almost be a textbook of what every composer who's ever worked in any real way throughout time, I mean, that's where you are, the ongoing tradition. You could go back to Monteverdi, you go back to Handel, you go back to anybody, and that beautiful list you just gave is exactly what everybody has always had to do. It just sounds more modern these days, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we don't have like I feel grateful that I don't have to like please some patron king or something with like the future of my career rests on like his shoulders. So it's like it's not quite like that. With commissions now, like funding comes from various places, but I think that most people I worked with, they like know that a composer is not going to have a home run with every piece. So when they commission something, of course, they want to have a really amazing piece by the end. But I think we always have to remember like composers were like, not, we can't produce perfect stuff every time, or like mind-blowing stuff with every new piece, but knowing that every commission is part of a composer's like artistic journey. So I don't know how much you like Beethoven 2 or 4 or
Yeah,
8, but they're not my favorites. But I knew that he had to write them to write the Fifth Symphony or Seventh Symphony or Ninth Symphony.
right, right.
And imagine if he was never commissioned to write the Eighth Symphony, like would the Ninth Symphony be what it is today? I don't know, but it's all a journey.
Oh, absolutely. And now everyone's looking towards the future and the reconstitution of the normalcy, as everyone says, which we're all going to cherish even more than we
Mhm.
did before. I think that's one of the great things that will come. And it seems to me that the wind ensemble is going to play a big role in that. I guess I think of that because of the versatility, because it connects with the youth, all these kids, you know, just counting the days so they can get back into band and
Mhm.
back on stage playing in their concert ensembles. I mean, what do you see coming out dynamically, or you probably haven't had much time to think yet about this, but what what is all this going to give us if in from things that you have thought about?
I think I agree. There's going to be a renaissance of art and music and things that we can do together. uh, it's like as a professional musician, I think many would agree that the more you do it, it's like it kind of just becomes like a routine and maybe a grind, and you start to um, maybe not take it for granted, but you start to not appreciate like what you do as much.
Right,
And
right.
so this really showed us like how much we do appreciate it. And like you mentioned, like how wind ensemble connects to youth. Like I grew up as a band kid playing in band, and it was so important to me, like for my development as a person and as a musician, obviously. And uh, I think for so many students, it's like kind of for this past year that's been taken away because band is something you can't really do over Zoom. Like we've tried, and there are
Mhm.
certain things you can do, but what I loved about band the most, maybe other than the music, was like all my friends were in it, and it was something I could always like look forward to doing with my friends and everyone else. And that just you can't replicate that on Zoom.
No.
You can get close maybe if you're really creative, but uh, it's just it's been missing for like a year. So I think when everyone gets back to it, we're just gonna be so excited. And like, can you imagine this first concert? It's gonna be amazing, like to see Jerry get back on the podium since last March, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be like triumphant. And I was like talking to some people about the Midwest Clinic coming up in December, and just it's gonna feel surreal.
Uh-huh.
And I can't wait. Hopefully it happens.
It will. Hey, it will.
Yeah.
Gratitude is gonna be the theme for a lot of us. You know,
Yeah.
I can't imagine someone saying, "Oh, I don't know if I want to go to this concert because my feet hurt." You know, it's gonna be, "Get me the keys. I'm on my way." You know, it really has been an instructive thing, and
Mhm.
I
And
just
I feel
what
like as a teacher, like I can't wait till I can like have a full class in person again,
yeah.
like things that like teaching over Zoom can be, I don't know how much you've done over Zoom, but it can just be so disorienting and it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and a lot, especially with children, younger
Mhm.
people. You know, with grown-ups, you can do a lot. It's different because they're
Oh yeah.
very differently. But for students, oof,
Hmm.
hat is off to you that you've been able to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, luckily I've had college students, but I did the last spring, I visited a class, like an elementary school class
Mhm,
over Microsoft Teams. And I was just like, it's great they're trying to do this, but I really felt for that teacher because it's so hard to, you know,
mhm.
to to keep the attention of 30 elementary school
Oh,
kids.
there's a bird.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I know that this concert we're in a countdown to when it's going to start. And then it's going to be bullseye, isn't it? It's going to be time to bring
Mhm.
up the lights and Jerry with the energy. Imagine Jerry storing up a year's worth of conducting energy.
Oh yeah, and like I said, this piece is like quite a fun trip for the conductor. So I'm really excited to see what he does with it, and really excited to hear the musicians again.
Yeah. Well,
Ugh,
thank you very much. And I tell you, I wish I look forward to the chance that you can be also together with everyone. And we have our pre-concert talks, which will I begin again, and maybe
mhm.
we'll be able to address that audience right there in front of you. Um,
Yeah,
we need you in Dallas. We need you to be there. So I guess we've covered a lot of things, and we're all sort of waiting for this all to start. It's like waiting for a chick to hatch, isn't it?
yeah.
So, um, many thanks to you, and I look forward to the next opportunity to see you and to hear what you do next.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for chatting with me today. It's really nice to see you again, and can't wait.
Yeah, very good. I can't either. No one can. So we'll just hold our breaths and let that countdown come. And
Yes,
and all the best to you. And we'll just see you at the concert whenever that will be.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Well, thank
Thank you.
you.